In February, you inaugurated the New York Times Death Watch.
Oh, yes. Proceeding right on schedule.
How is that going?
So unfortunately, I haven't followed that series up because I don't want to become crazy anti-New York Times guy.
I think you already are.
A lot of those out there. It's a real. I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a real problem. It's you know, there's a tragedy happening, which is, you know, basically major newspapers are in just total collapse, and everybody knows that the newspaper companies at this point are the first to tell you. Sam Zell bought the Tribune company and went on CNBC like 6 months later, and they asked him, you know, how's the advertising going? And he said, what advertising?
If you were running the New York Times, right now, what would you do?
You have to shut off the print edition right now.
Yeah?
The only way to save these things, you got to play offense. You can't play defense. You got to do what Intel did in '85 when they were getting killed by the Japanese in memory chips, which was their dominant business. And they killed the business. They shut it off and they focused on their much smaller business of microprocessors because that was going to be the market of the future. And the minute they got out of playing defense and got onto playing offense, their future was secure.
There's so much going on in social networking. You've got the opening up of social network, the open social sort of movement. You've got your company, Ning, which is sort of telling us social networks can be about these little niches, not about this big, gigantic social network. You've got Facebook. So if you take that out 4 or 5 years, as all of this starts to meld and develop, what does social networking mean?
Right. This is very fundamental behavior we're dealing with, right? You put 1 billion people online, the sort of single most important thing, I mean, first thing they want to do, of course, is read articles in Portfolio magazine. But the second thing they want to do, after they're done with the profile of the CEO of Sprint, the second thing they do, the single most sort of foundational thing that people do on the internet is they connect with other people. Like the internet is much more, I believe, at sort of a mass scale. It's intrinsically a communication mechanism. Along the way, it ends up carrying a lot of information, and a lot of things get bought and sold, and a lot of other stuff happens. But a tremendous amount of the sort of fundamental emotional engagement and behavior that people have is how they connect with each other. And so, you know, eBay has gotten gigantic on the back of that phenomenon, and Amazon has gotten gigantic, and, you know, a huge amount of activity of people on Google is searching for other people and searching for, you know, all kinds of things related to other people. So the concept that people can be able to find each other online, connect online, communicate online, share online, you know, share information, be transparent, contribute, engage in all kinds of sort of bottoms-up, you know, user-contributed, content-oriented behavior. YouTube being another example. I mean, this is very foundational, fundamental behavior. There's this just enormous, I think, bottle-up energy on the part of just normal people where they want to connect and they want to contribute. And I think that's exactly what they're doing. So with that as kind of a macro trend, I think that'll play out in lots of different ways with different kinds of products. You know, and if I phrase it that way, clearly you can put Quick in that bucket, you put Twitter in that bucket, you put Ning in that bucket as a way for people to connect around social networks, around topics that they share in common. And then Facebook, you know, the way Facebook looks at the world is to be a social utility, connecting basically everybody, you know, just an enormous number of people. And this gets me to why I don't like looking at it as a sector. As a thing, as a brand, as a product, as a company, as a thing that people use in their daily lives. People don't just like randomly go online and say which social network will I go on today. They go to the one that they go to the one or the ones that they're connected to. Right. And the connection with Facebook with its users is incredibly strong. And the network effect of being able to bring more people online is incredibly strong. So like any company, you know, any company can screw up their opportunity, but you take, you know, monster market, right? 1 billion people ought to be on this thing. You take an incredibly driven and determined founder. You take, you know, plenty of financial horsepower and funding. You take a very innovative approach to technology development, and that's a pretty good recipe.
I have to ask the guy who created the browser. We have a new one. Just
I've heard rumors about that
earlier this week.
Yes.
And I actually would love to, hear what went through your mind. I mean, just, seeing that news, seeing the browser. Yeah. What your thoughts were.
Yeah. So, Kevin, of course, is referring to, I would assume, to Google's new
those guys.
Chrome browser. It's a really extraordinary. I think it's a really extraordinary event. I think it's a really extraordinary product. It's very meaningful because if you look at what they've done technically, they've implemented an entirely new, in particular, they've implemented an entirely new JavaScript engine. JavaScript is the programming language that's built into the browser, and when you're on a website and it's doing basically anything fancy, odds are it's in JavaScript. Or actually, if it's not, it's in Flash. If it's in a little window like a video, it's in Flash. But if it's in the web page itself, it's in JavaScript. And so basically, all of the interaction that you get on the web at this point is in JavaScript. Any remaining applications, in particular, any remaining desktop applications that haven't yet been re-implemented in the browser are about to get re-implemented in the browser. Basically, the barriers to doing everything in the browser are falling very fast. And that includes, a whole range of things, obviously, with what Google is doing with Google Docs. Companies like Zoho are doing on a standalone basis with word processor, spreadsheet, presentation packages. A whole bunch of startups are doing that kind of thing. That stuff's all going into the browser. And then, even video editing, music editing, multimedia applications that used to be desktop PC or Mac applications are going to collapse straight into the browser.